So it's time for another breakfast bite on Pure 247 Radio. And I am pleased to welcome again, because this is Sarah Dawkins, not for the first time, but for the second time. Thank you so much, Sarah, for coming back. Are you all right?
Yeah, it's a pleasure. It's nice to be back.
Oh, brilliant. And Sarah, you're from Torch Trust, aren't you? Anything you want
I
to say
am,
about
yeah.
Torch Trust today?
Yeah, so Torch is a charity that is all about helping anybody, regardless of their belief or their background, that experiences sight loss to have access to Christian resources. So whether someone's been a Christian for years or they're just starting to think about, oh, maybe Jesus has got something relevant to my life, we want to help resource them. So we do a mix of things. So there's group holidays, and we produce the Bible and books and Bible reading notes, and we do some online groups as well. So there's something hopefully for everybody. And if
Oh,
not, we'd love to hear other ways in which we could support people.
oh, thank you so much. That's really helpful. So Torch Trust, lots there for people to get involved with. So what have you got for us today for breakfast bites?
Yeah, I was trying to remember what I did last time, which was part of the problem. I was like, I can't remember. But I've recently been looking through Ruth, which is, I think, a great Old Testament book, partly because it's nice and short, which really helps. But also, there's some amazing truths in there. And we've been looking at this as part of my church small group. And just, we've been trying to make ourselves stay chapter by chapter in each chapter and not rush ahead. Because, I don't know if it's a spoiler when it's 2,000 years old, but the book of Ruth has an amazing ending, and we kind of want to rush ourselves there because we know what's coming. We know this really good stuff is about to be there. But walking through it chapter by chapter and going a bit slower has made us just go, okay, what's actually happening in this chapter? And the thing for me this morning is names. I don't know if you know what your name means. I've always loved the fact that Sarah means princess, so I very, very happily tell people that because I know it well. There's other names that people do know or don't know their names and what they mean. I guess different people maybe are less happy to know their names, but in the book of Ruth, we're introduced very early on, first few chapters, to this woman called Naomi. And Naomi is the feature, really. Although it's called the Book of Ruth, we hear a lot about Naomi. So Naomi has gone off to a different land, a land that they've been told they shouldn't really go to, and has, gone there with her husband and sons, has then lost her husband and both her sons. And she then has this dilemma of what to do, and her two daughters-in-law are saying, oh, we'll come with you, and she does everything she can to stop them coming. And then Ruth is like, nope, I am going to come, whatever you say. And that's a really tricky thing in some ways, isn't it? It's kind of like, what does it mean for her to really say, no, I'm coming? And we get that beautiful line where Ruth says to Naomi, your people will be my people, your God will be my God. And everything changes for Ruth at that point. But then we get to the end of chapter 1. So all of this has happened. There's a lot. And although as a church small group, we're looking at this chapter by chapter, so relatively slowly, actually, there's months upon months of content just in chapter 1. And you get Naomi returning back to the land. And she says in verse 20, so actually, I'm going to read from verse 19. So the two of them, Naomi and Ruth, went on till they came to Bethlehem. And when they came to Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them. And the women said, is this Naomi? Their friend's been away, assumedly for a number of years, and she's come back. And they're like, oh, is this her? And she says, do not call me Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I find it really interesting that she's been through such a period of grief and such a period of loss, so much so that it changes her name. Her name from Naomi means pleasant. And then she says, no, call me Mara. Mara means bitter. And I don't know if you've ever been in this kind of season of bitterness and just actually it feels like God has dealt really awfully with me. God has dealt very bitterly with me, as Naomi says. Because she goes on to say, I went away full and the Lord's brought me back empty. I guess to a greater or lesser extent, we all have these kind of experiences. where I was just like, actually, it's really changed me. It's changed who I am. It's changed everything about me. And yet she's saying, call me bitter. But what I think is amazing in these verses is the Lord brought me back empty. The Almighty has dealt with me. Actually, the Lord and the Almighty are still there in her story. So she is feeling the weight of grief, she's feeling the weight of bitterness, the complete weight of loss. And yet, she still knows that it's the Lord who's in control. She's not necessarily warm towards him, but she hasn't forgotten who it is that is actually ultimately in control. Now, we could do a whole thing about whether or not Naomi has faith at this point and what that means, but I don't think that's the aim of just looking at this briefly this morning. It's more to do with the fact, when we are in the midst of hard times, where do we look? I think we're really quick to just be like, God doesn't care, God's not part of my life, God's left me. And what I find fascinating about Naomi is God hasn't left her. She knows that, but life isn't easy for her. And then we get in verse 22, this beautiful thing. They've originally left Israel. They've left the land because of famine. They left Judah because of famine. And you get, so Naomi returned with Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, returned from the country of Moab, and they come back to Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. So Naomi is saying, I have been taken away, I'm left empty, and yet they come back to this absolute feast and harvest. So they've left famine, they've come back to harvest. It's interesting, just even in those few verses, isn't it? God is going to be with them. God is setting this up that no, God is not leaving them. She may say, call me bitter, that may be how she feels, but the Lord God has not left her.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much, Sarah. I absolutely love the book of Ruth, but I love how you've drawn that out, that God is constantly there despite the problems. And I love that. I had never thought about that before, how she came back and it's already, life's going to get better. I mean, like you say, I want to get to the end because it's a fantastic story. There's a great ending, isn't there? But she does start off in a bad place, but she's being honest and being real, which, I love too. Oh, that's absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. I haven't read the book of Ruth for a while, so I want to go and read it now.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites. It's a great one. Like, there's so much going on in it, and you just think, it sets up the genealogy of Jesus, but actually, it's a woman who is suffering and finding life hard, and yet, even in the midst of that, we can see the glimpses of how God's being good, and it's that challenge to us in that life might be hard, but are there people around us who can actually say, hey, can you see that God's still being good to you in the midst of this?
Yeah, that's really absolutely. That is a fantastic message, Sarah, to take us into today, to be honest. God is with us. Thank you so much, Sarah, and hopefully we'll see you again. Take care. Have a good rest of your day.
You too. Bye.